The mahogany conference table gleamed under the soft lighting of my father's office as I stared at the papers in front of me. My hands were steady, but my heart raced as I read the documents that would effectively erase my inheritance. "Just sign here, Alexandra," my father said, tapping the bottom of the page with his Mont Blanc pen. "It's for the best." Really, my name is Alexandra Chen, and at 25, I was about to sign away my $2 million trust fund to my younger sister, Sarah, not because I wanted to, but because my parents had made it clear I had no choice. "I don't understand," I said, looking up at my father's impatient face. "The trust was set up by grandfather for both of us. Why does it all need to go to Sarah?" My mother, perched on the edge of her chair like she was afraid to wrinkle her designer suit, cleared her throat. "Darling, you know how Sarah is. She's free-spirited. She needs this safety net." Free-spirited, that was their polite way of saying my 22-year-old sister had never held a job for more than 3 months and had dropped out of college twice. Meanwhile, I had graduated summa cum laude from Yale and was already making 6 figures at an investment firm. "And I don't need a safety net?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. My father sighed, the sound heavy with disappointment. "Alex, let's be honest, you're boring, responsible. You've never taken a risk in your life. Sarah, she knows how to live. This money would be wasted on you. You'd probably just invest it or something equally dull." The words hit like physical blows, but I didn't flinch. I was used to this, the constant comparisons, the way they dismissed my achievements because they weren't flashy enough. Sarah was the family firecracker, the one who commanded attention. I was just the reliable one, the backup plan. "Besides," my mother added, her perfectly manicured nails drumming on the table, "Sarah has plans. She wants to start a fashion line. That takes capital." I thought about Sarah's previous plans, the juice bar that never opened, the yoga studio that lasted 2 weeks, the travel blog that consisted of 3 posts before she got bored, but I kept those thoughts to myself. "And what about my plans?" I asked quietly. My father waved his hand dismissively. "What plans? You're already successful. You don't need this money." I looked down at the papers again, thinking about the business proposal sitting in my desk drawer at home. For years, I'd been developing a concept for a financial technology company that would help small businesses manage their finances. I had the experience, the connections, and the vision. What I needed was capital. But they didn't know about that. They'd never asked. "Fine," I said, picking up the pen. "You're right. Sarah needs it more." My father beamed as I signed, probably the first time he'd looked at me with approval in years. "That's my girl, always practical." As I stood to leave, my mother caught my arm. "You'll come to dinner on Sunday? Sarah wants to share her ideas for the fashion line." I nodded, already knowing I wouldn't be there. Of course. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the city lights through my window. The business proposal lay open on my coffee table, mocking me. $2 million would have been enough to get it off the ground, to make my dreams reality. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. "OMG, thank you. You're the best big sis ever. Going to celebrate. Want to come?" I didn't respond. Instead, I picked up my laptop and opened a new document. If I couldn't have the trust fund, I'd find another way. My parents thought I was boring, responsible, incapable of taking risks. Fine, I'd show them exactly what boring could do. The next morning, I walked into my office at Goldman Sachs earlier than usual. By 7 a.m., I was already in a meeting with Marcus, my mentor and the only person I trusted with my real plans. "They did what?" he asked, his coffee cup freezing halfway to his mouth. I explained the situation, keeping my voice professional despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. When I finished, Marcus let out a low whistle. "That's rough, kid, but maybe it's for the best." I raised an eyebrow. "How exactly is losing $2 million for the best?" He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Because now you're angry, and in my experience, nothing motivates quite like anger channeled the right way." I thought about that as he pulled out a business card and slid it across the desk. "Remember that venture capitalist I mentioned? The one who's interested in fintech startups? He's in town next week. Maybe it's time you showed him that proposal of yours." I picked up the card, running my fingers over the embossed letters. "You really think it's ready?" Marcus smiled. "Alex, I've been in this business 30 years. Your idea isn't just ready, it's revolutionary. The trust fund would have been nice, but maybe you need to build this from scratch. Prove to yourself and everyone else what you're really capable of." That evening, instead of going home, I went to my favorite coffee shop and started reworking my business proposal. The anger that had been simmering all day transformed into focused determination. Every dismissive comment, every comparison to Sarah, every time they'd called me boring, I channeled it all into my work. By midnight, I had a completely revamped presentation. It wasn't just about managing finances anymore, it was about revolutionizing how small businesses operated. I would create a platform that combined AI-driven financial analysis with personalized business coaching, something that would make entrepreneurship accessible to everyone, not just those born with trust funds. My phone had been buzzing all night with messages from my family, Sarah sharing pictures of her shopping spree with my former trust fund, my mother asking about Sunday dinner, my father sending a group text about how proud he was of his generous older daughter. I ignored them all. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. By day, I worked my regular job, impressing my superiors with my increased focus and drive. By night, I refined my proposal, ran numbers, and planned my pitch. The morning of my meeting with the venture capitalist, I dressed with particular care, a sharp charcoal suit that projected confidence without trying too hard. As I fastened my grandmother's pearl necklace, the only family heirloom I'd been given, I thought about her words from years ago. Sometimes, Alexandra, she'd said, people will underestimate you because you're quiet, because you think before you act. Let them. There's power in being underestimated. The venture capitalist, Mr. Hammond, wasn't what I expected. Instead of the aggressive shark I'd imagined, he was a quiet, thoughtful man who listened intently as I walked him through my presentation. Your numbers are solid, he said when I finished, but what interests me more is your vision. You're not just creating a product, you're trying to democratize financial success. I nodded, feeling a surge of hope. Everyone deserves a chance to build something meaningful, not just those who were born with advantages. He studied me for a long moment. You know, most people who come to me, they're all about the quick win, the flashy exit strategy, but you're playing the long game. Yes, I said simply, I am. He smiled. Good, because so am I. He pulled out a document from his briefcase. Let's talk numbers. 3 hours later, I walked out of his office with a commitment for $5 million in funding, more than double what my trust fund would have been. But more importantly, I had a partner who believed in my vision, who saw my responsibility not as boring, but as a strength. As I headed back to my apartment, my phone buzzed with another text from Sarah. Just signed lease on a storefront. Fashion empire, here I come. Dinner Sunday to celebrate? I typed back my first response in days. Can't. Building my own empire. Then I turned off my phone, opened my laptop, and started planning. My parents thought they knew me, thought they could predict my every move. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 1 year after signing away my trust fund, I stood in an empty office space in downtown Manhattan, surrounded by the bare bones of what would become Ascend Financial Technologies. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The contractors can start next week, Marcus said, reviewing the plans on his tablet. He'd left Goldman Sachs to become my COO, believing in my vision enough to take the risk. We should be operational within a month. I nodded, walking the perimeter of what would soon be our main workspace. And the development team? All signed. Top talent from Google, Amazon, and a few promising startups. Your reputation is already attracting the best. My reputation. It was strange to think how much had changed in a year. Mr. Hammond's investment had opened doors, but it was our initial beta testing that had really turned heads. Small businesses using our platform were showing unprecedented growth rates, and word was spreading fast. Have you heard from your family? Marcus asked carefully. I shook my head. After my cryptic text to Sarah, I'd maintained minimal contact. Christmas cards, brief responses to group messages, polite excuses for missed family dinners. They knew I was working on something, but in their world, if it wasn't making headlines or throwing lavish launch parties, it didn't register. Sarah's fashion line had opened with great fanfare, my trust fund paying for a glamorous storefront and a star-studded launch party. Last I heard, they were already struggling to make rent. They'll notice soon enough, I said, turning back to the plans. But first, we have work to do. The next few months were a blur of 18-hour days and endless decisions. I threw myself into every aspect of the business, from fine-tuning our AI algorithms to personally meeting with our first major clients. My apartment became more of a storage space than a home, my life revolving around the office and our growing team. 6 months after we moved into the office, we hit our first major milestone, 1,000 active business clients, with a waiting list growing daily. The New York Times ran a feature on us, highlighting how we were transforming small business finance. That evening, as I was reviewing the latest performance metrics, my assistant knocked on my office door. Ms. Chen, your sister is here. I looked up, surprised. Sarah stood in the doorway, looking uncomfortable in her designer clothes and perfectly styled hair. She'd lost weight, and there was a tension around her eyes I'd never seen before. Nice place, she said, glancing around my office. Very corporate. What do you want, Sarah? She fidgeted with her handbag. Hermes, probably bought with my former trust fund. I need help. The fashion line. It's not going well. I thought maybe, since you're doing this finance thing, I repeated slowly, is not a bailout service for failed passion projects. That's not fair. I worked hard. Did you? I cut her off. Did you spend months developing a business plan? Did you research your market? Did you calculate your runway and burn rate? Or did you just throw money at it and hope it would work? She stared at me, tears welling in her eyes. Why are you being so mean? I'm your sister. Yes, you are. The sister who took my trust fund because she needed it more. The sister who never once asked what my plans were for that money. Mom and Dad said. Mom and Dad were wrong. I stood up, walking to the window. But this isn't about the money, Sarah. It's about respect. None of you ever respected me or my choices. You saw me as boring, reliable Alex, good for nothing except cleaning up your messes. She was crying openly now. I'm sorry, I didn't know. No, you didn't, because you never asked. I turned back to her. I can't help you with money, but I can give you advice. Learn from this. Stop looking for easy answers and quick fixes. Build something real. The business is real, she protested weakly. No, it was a fantasy funded by my trust fund. There's a difference. I sat back down, effectively ending the conversation. Good luck, Sarah. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about how different our paths had been. Sarah had been given everything: money, support, endless chances to fail. I'd been dismissed, underestimated, forced to build from nothing. And maybe that had been my real advantage all along. The next morning, I received an email from my father. Alexandra, Sarah told us about your meeting. Your behavior was unacceptable. Family helps family. You've changed, and not for the better. Dad, I typed a short reply. You're right, I have changed. I'm not your backup plan anymore. I'm the CEO of a company that's about to change the financial industry, and I did it without your help or approval. Alexandra, then I turned back to my work. There would be time for family drama later. Right now, I had an empire to build. 3 months later, Ascent Financial Technologies was valued at $100 million after our Series B funding round. The Wall Street Journal ran a profile calling me the future of fintech. Our client waiting list had grown to over 10,000 businesses. And still, my family didn't really understand what I was building. They saw the headlines, heard the buzz, but to them, it wasn't real success, not like Sarah's fashion line had been, with its glamorous parties and society connections. That was about to change. I scheduled a board meeting for the following week, knowing my parents would see the announcement in the business press. Sure enough, my mother called the next day. Darling, why didn't you tell us about this board meeting? Your father knows several excellent potential board members. The board is already set. Mom, I interrupted, but you and Dad are welcome to attend as observers. In fact, I insist. There was a pause. Well, yes, of course, we'd love to. I smiled as I hung up. Everything was falling into place. The morning of the board meeting, I arrived early to ensure every detail was perfect. The conference room on the top floor of our building offered a stunning view of the city. The table was set with leather portfolios containing our latest financials, and the catering was immaculate. My parents arrived 15 minutes early, dressed as if for one of their charity galas. My father's eyes widened as he took in the scope of our operations, the hundreds of employees, the energy humming through the office. Alexandra, he said, trying to maintain his usual authoritative tone, this is impressive. I smiled politely. Thank you. Shall we begin? The board meeting began precisely at 9 a.m. I sat at the head of the conference table, my parents positioned near the middle where they could see everything exactly as I'd planned. Welcome everyone, I began, standing to address the room. Before we discuss our quarterly results, I'd like to introduce our newest board member. The door opened, and Mr. Hammond walked in. My father straightened in his chair, even he knew who David Hammond was. Many of you know Mr. Hammond as our first investor, I continued. What you might not know is that he's just agreed to lead our Series C funding round, with a valuation of $500 million. The room erupted in quiet murmurs. My mother's hand flew to her pearl necklace, her nervous tell. My father's face had gone slightly pale. But that's not all, I said, Clicking to the next slide, we're also announcing our acquisition of Chin Global Solutions. Now my father did react, jerking forward in his chair. Chin Global Solutions was his company's main competitor in the import-export business, a company that had been steadily eating away at his market share for the past year. How? What? He sputtered. I smiled. Oh, I should mention, we've been quietly backing Chin Global's digital transformation for the past 8 months. Our AI-driven logistics solutions have helped them capture 40% of the market, which is why they were happy to become part of Ascend's growing portfolio. The blood drained from my father's face as he finally understood. While he'd been dismissing my company as some vague finance thing, I'd been systematically building the tools that would revolutionize his industry, and I'd helped his biggest competitor use them first. Now, I continued, moving to the next slide, let's talk about our expansion plans. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of numbers and projections, each more impressive than the last. My parents sat in stunned silence as board members praised our growth, our innovation, our vision for the future. When the meeting ended, my father approached me as others filed out. Alexandra, he said, his voice strained, we need to talk, do we? I gathered my papers calmly. About what? How I'm too boring, too responsible? Or about how you gave away my trust fund because Sarah needed it more? That's not fair, my mother interjected. We were trying to help your sister. No, I said sharply, you were doing what you always did, prioritizing Sarah's whims over my work. You never once asked what I planned to do with that money. You never took my ambition seriously. But this, my father gestured around the office. Why didn't you tell us? I laughed. The sound hollow. Would you have listened? You didn't listen 3 years ago when I tried to tell you about my business plan. You didn't listen when I said I had dreams of my own. You were too busy managing Sarah's latest crisis to notice what I was building. We didn't know dash. Exactly. You didn't know because you didn't care to know. I straightened my jacket. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run. Wait, my father said, reaching for my arm. Let us help. I can offer guidance, connections, like the guidance you offered Sarah. I pulled away. No thank you. I built this on my own. Despite you. Not because of you. And now my company is worth more than yours. The truth of that statement hung in the air between us. In 3 years, I had built something larger and more valuable than the business he'd inherited and run for 30 years. What about your sister? My mother asked quietly. Her business failed. I finished. Because you gave her money without making her earn it. You didn't do her any favors. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Just heard about your company. I'm so sorry, Alex, for everything. At least one of them was learning. You can't just shut us out. My father protested. We're family. Family? I turned to face them fully. Family respects each other. Family listens. Family doesn't dismiss dreams as boring just because they don't understand them. I walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. I'm not shutting you out. I'm showing you who I've always been, the person you were too busy to see. The question is, are you finally ready to pay attention? They were quiet for a long moment. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice small. We were wrong, Alexandra, about everything. Yes, I agreed. You were. Can we start over? My father asked. I turned back to them, seeing them clearly, two people who had lived so long in their narrow view of success that they'd failed to see it taking shape right in front of them. That depends, I said. Are you ready to see me for who I am, not who you assumed I was? They nodded, looking almost childlike in their uncertainty. Then yes, we can start over, but on my terms. I sat down at my desk. First, you're going to really listen, to how I built this company. No interruptions, no judgments. Then we'll talk about moving forward. For the next 2 hours, I told them everything, the late nights, the risks, the setbacks and triumphs. For the first time in my life, they gave me their full attention. When I finished, my father had tears in his eyes. I've never been more wrong about anyone in my life, he said softly. Or more proud, my mother added. I felt something shift inside me, not forgiveness, exactly, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out a folder. I've created a foundation to help young entrepreneurs who don't have access to trust funds or family connections. I'm seeding it with $2 million, the exact amount of my original trust fund. I'd like you both to serve on the advisory board. They looked at me in surprise. Not to make decisions, I clarified, but to watch and learn how people with nothing but dreams and determination can build something extraordinary. To understand what you missed seeing in me. My father picked up the folder with trembling hands. We'd be honored. As they left my office that evening, I watched them walk through the workspace I'd built. They moved differently now, smaller, humbled, but perhaps wiser. My phone buzzed with another text from Sarah. Had my first job interview today, starting from scratch. Thanks for the wake-up call. I smiled as I replied, proud of you, sis. Want to get coffee and talk about real business plans? The sun was setting over Manhattan as I gathered my things to leave. On my desk sat a small photo I'd recently added, my younger self and my grandmother's pearl necklace. She'd seen my potential long before anyone else. You were right, Gran, I whispered. There is power in being underestimated. I walked out of my office, past the sign that read Ascend Financial Technologies Alexander Chin, CEO and founder, and into the future I'd built for myself. My family had thought they were teaching me a lesson by taking away my trust fund. Instead, they'd taught themselves one about the danger of underestimating a quiet girl with big dreams and the determination to make them real. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about rising so far above what others thought possible that they have no choice but to look up and wonder how they ever missed seeing you soar.